Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the West Point Assumption of Command ceremony for the 60th Superintendent of the United States Military Academy, Lieutenant General Darryl A. Williams. During the ceremony, you will be asked to stand and render appropriate courtesies for honors and our national anthem. It is appropriate for civilians to stand with their right hand over the heart, and for military members and veterans to stand at the position of attention. Please rise for the arrival of the official party, the playing of honors, our national anthem, and the invocation. The official party consists of the 39th Chief of Staff of the Army, General Mark A. Milley, and the 60th Superintendent of the United States Military Academy, Lieutenant General Darryl A. Williams. General Milley has deferred honors to Lieutenant General Williams for this morning's ceremony.
Say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, rose-brown stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please remain standing for the invocation by Chaplain Pawlikowski.
Almighty God, today is a crazy day. Our day plus assumption of command. As General Patton said, at least in the movie, Congress has its schedule and I have mine. Well, God, Congress has its schedule and you have yours, and your timing is always right. And so blessed are you, Lord God of all creation, for bringing us to this happy day when we welcome Lieutenant General Williams and his wife, Erin. And as we witness Lieutenant General Darryl Williams become the 60th Superintendent of the United States Military Academy, we ask you to assist General Williams with your spirit of wisdom and understanding, that the administration of his duties may be conducted in righteousness, that he may be eminently useful to your people whom he will lead, our cadets, staff and faculty and their families, and ultimately the American people whom he will serve. May he enforce regulations with discipline, with justice and mercy, restrain vice and immorality, and encourage due respect for all virtues, especially duty, honor, country, as he assumes the weight of his new position today. Amen.
Please be seated. A bouquet of budding yellow-red roses are being presented to Mrs. Williams from the West Point family as a symbol of a heartfelt welcome to West Point. The official party will now move forward for the assumption of command. Since the beginning of recorded history, military leaders have used a visible symbol of authority around which to rally their command. The very soul of a military unit is symbolized by the colors under which it fights. For the colors record achievements of the past, stand as a guardian over its present destiny, and ensure inspiration for its future. The colors serve as a proud emblem of our history. The ceremonial passing of the United States Military Academy colors symbolizes the assumption of command and responsibility of West Point to Lieutenant General Darryl A. Williams. The assumption of command will begin as General Milley receives the colors from Command Sergeant Major Kenny. The passing of the colors from General Milley to Lieutenant General Williams represents the assumption of command of the United States Military Academy and West Point's senior commanding officer leadership position. Lieutenant General Williams now returns the colors to Command Sergeant Major Kenny, signifying the beginning of his duties as the 60th Superintendent of the United States Military Academy. By authority of paragraph 2-5, Army Regulation 600-20, Lieutenant General Darryl A. Williams assumes command of the United States Military Academy and the West Point Reservation, West Point, New York, effective 2 July 2018.
That's a big deal, brother. Hey, I got it. So, I haven't forgot. It's only been 11 days since I've been up here, so. Hey, I want to thank everyone for being here, and I particularly want to thank the chaplain for ordering up probably the most humid day of the year for my arrival. That's awesome, so thank you. And I want to just say how great it is for me personally to be back here at West Point. And as you know, I was just here 11 days ago, and we said goodbye to General Caslin. And it seems that in those 11 days, West Point has survived the reign of Superintendent Gilland. You know, I learned a lot about West Point. So I've been the chief of staff a couple of years ago. And so last night, in preparation for today's momentous events, I took a ride on the information highway, and I asked Siri who had the shortest tenure as Soup, and I expected that Gilland would have the shortest tenure with only 11 days in the saddle. And I think that he would be in the history books by now, but the Chief of Staff of the Army was wrong. The record for the shortest Soup is 5 days, and it's held by none other than the guy who fired the first shots in the Civil War, General P.T. Beauregard, who was the Soup from 23 to 28 January 1861. And he was relieved of his duties after 5 days for having, quote, Southern sympathies right after Lincoln's inauguration. So, Steve, you came in second in the history book since 1802. I'm sorry you couldn't have won, but you should be proud you don't have Southern sympathies. And Darryl, you don't have anything to worry about. You're good to go. So you can sympathize all you want with Pennsylvania and the Philadelphia Eagles, but all I want you to do is to produce great second lieutenants and to beat Navy. If you do that, you'll get beyond 5 days. So, and I also, my learning up here at West Point is sort of, I'm kind of like a plebe up here, I guess. So today, as many of you know, and I welcome Senator Ernst here and her Sergeant Major husband. That's great. Rangers lead the way. And, of course, today is our day for all of the new cadets, the plebes. Senator Ernst and her wonderful husband left off their daughter today, and that's great. And it's a busy day today with our day on the plane, and as the chaplain said, it's a crazy day, but I obviously have a lot to learn about West Point because a cadet in a red sash stopped me. He actually didn't stop me. He jacked me up. just a couple minutes ago on the way over here as I was standing on his line, and I'm not sure what that means. I'll go back to Siri and try to figure out what standing on the line means. But I want to thank everyone for being here. And again, Senator Ernst and Sergeant Major, thank you for being here. We've got, as mentioned already, Steve Gillen and Cindy Jebb. Thank you for both being here. I see Coach Riley and Boo Corrigan back there. Thank you for being here as well. I see Sergeant Major Kenny, who was, just did the change with us. Thank you, and thank you for representing all that's good about all the non-commissioned officers in our United States Army and all the friends and classmates. By the way, are there any classmates here from 83? Is anybody? That was so unbelievably weak. Was there actually a class? I mean, wasn't your motto "proud to be 83" or something like that? Can you guys sound off a little bit? Holy smokes! Wow, that was pretty weak. Hey, 2 weeks ago we said goodbye to a great leader, a personal friend of mine, Lieutenant General now retired Bob Castle, after 5 great years as the Sup. And in the long tradition of the Army, and the Army song of caissons go marching along, today we turn the page and we welcome yet another great leader to lead this incredible institution as the 60th Superintendent of West Point, Lieutenant General Darryl Williams. Many of you know him so well. I know him for many, many years, and I will tell you, I polled not only his friends, but all the other 4-star generals and 3-star generals in the Army. Darryl is universally considered as a wonderful person, inspired pick to be here as a superintendent. He's a great guy, an outgoing personality, and this is an officer of tremendous talent, competence, character, and I have no doubt in my mind he's going to make his own historic mark on this academy. Darryl has been a soldier for 35 years and counting now, but his soldier's service as a soldier is not just his own sacrifice. It's the sacrifice also of his family, and his family is shared in the burden, so many ways, sacrificing far more than he. And I often speak about Army service as being a family affair, and the Williams family of service is no exception, and their record of service extends far beyond the time that Darryl ever put on the uniform here on his own our day. As Darryl's father, Lieutenant Colonel retired Lonnie Williams, served in Vietnam and couldn't be with us today for health reasons, but he was a combat engineer who served in Germany and Korea and 2 tours in Vietnam and, of course, in multiple installations in CONUS. And as a young officer in career in the mid-1960s, he led a patrol to clear obstacles in the demilitarized zone, and he was attacked by North Korean troops and received the Bronze Star Medal for his performance in a very, very difficult and dangerous situation. While in Vietnam, on his first tour in 1962, as a young lieutenant, he was responsible for building bases as the U.S. military began to gear up for what amounted to a lengthy war. 10 years later, in 1972, as a lieutenant colonel, he was part of a small team that conducted airfield assessments and repair, and on one of those missions, he led a small 6-man team to Loc Ninh, an airfield that was held by the North Vietnamese Army at the time. And this was part of a plan and a coordinated prisoner of war exchange. The airfield at Loc Ninh had been badly damaged by fighting and needed significant repair before planes could land to transport the POWs. Surrounded by North Vietnamese soldiers, he and his team conducted their assessment and instructed the workers on how to fix the battered runways. The POW exchange was able to proceed as scheduled 1 week later, thanks to Lieutenant Colonel Williams and his team. And again, he was awarded the Bronze Star for his actions in a very tense standoff between, arguably, what was still an enemy. Unfortunately, Lieutenant Colonel Williams couldn't be with us, but Darryl, I know he's with us in spirit right now, and we want to all thank him for his tremendous service to our country. And Darryl's mother, Shirley, is here. In addition to being an Army spouse, she was also a career educator, 35 years of teaching in what I would argue is one of the top 2 or 3 most important jobs in America, that of being a mother, that of being a teacher, and that of serving in the uniform of our country. So thank you for everything you have done over so many, many years. Much of it was done in Northern Virginia, and you have had a tremendous impact on so many children. And not only that, but she also has worked relentlessly as a volunteer for Red Cross. She was a case correspondent for military families in the Holy Land of New England. Very nice. And she did such great work up there that I want to thank you on behalf of everyone here for everything you've done for our country and for making Darryl into the man he is today. You are clearly his North Star. So thank you so much, Shirley. Darryl's stepdad, James Taylor, is here, and he also served in uniform, having served in Korea during the war, and then became a school teacher and principal after that. His father-in-law, Lieutenant Colonel retired John Donahue, is here, served in Vietnam as well as Japan, Korea, and Taiwan during his Army career. And his brother, Michael, is a former Marine only because he couldn't make the standards of the Army, but thank you. Thank you, Marine, for being here. A truly impressive military family with tremendous record of service and something to be very, very proud of, and I want to thank you all. But you know, the spirit of service also carries over to the Williams children. Kendall is an Army spouse. That's Darryl's daughter. And she's also the mother of 2 children, and you can see her in the back holding one of them right now. And she's a physician's assistant. Her husband currently is an infantry officer with the 3rd Cavalry Regiment at Fort Hood, and he returns home tomorrow, I think is the big day. So that's great. He's been deployed on Operation Inherent Resolve and couldn't be with us today, but we know that he too is with us in spirit. Nathan and Zach have followed in Darryl's footsteps also to become Army artillery officers. Zach was commissioned out of Virginia Tech in 2014 and served as a platoon leader in FDO in the Great Screaming Eagles of the 101st Airborne Divisions. Unfortunately, he wasn't good enough to get in the Currahees, and he had to serve in the Rockassons. And Nathan, right over here, is just graduated from West Point in the class of 2018. He had difficulty getting some of his roommates and classmates in the room, so we had to do Chief of Staff override. So where's his roommates? Where are you at? I want to make sure you made it in. There you go. They're very good. So Nathan's on his way to Bullock, and then shortly he'll be assigned to Fort Lewis after successful completion of Airborne and Ranger School. Right? Roger that. It's all in the brain. It's all between the ears, son. You're going to make it. One step in front of the other. No mountain too high. Dahlonega can't crush you. You got it? All right. Get your mind right. So Kendall, Zach, and Nathan, we want to thank all of you for everything you've done and for supporting both your mother and father and for your willingness to serve our nation and our Army. And I can tell you that your dad would not be here without all 3 of you and your unrelenting love and your sacrifice as well over the years in support of him. So thank you. But the one I would argue has probably sacrificed the most is Erin. Erin is Darryl's wife, and she has been his wife for 30 consecutive years. If that doesn't spell sacrifice, I don't know what else. So she's not only raised 3 wonderful children, but she's made 17 family moves all around the world. And you know, it's tough for us as soldiers who deploy and sometimes you get into combat. But I would tell you that it's much, much tougher on our families as they change schools and jobs and friends and sports teams and so much more every few years. And at the same time, they're constantly worrying about their soldier and if that soldier is okay, especially if they're in harm's way at a time. The stress on families, the stress on soldiers' families is enormous. And it has always fallen to the spouse to keep it together, to hide all of that anxiety and that stress, make life seem somewhat normal for the children, and to drive on. And Erin, no one has done that better than you. You've done that not only for your own family, but for the hundreds of families that you've taken care of in all of the units over the years that Darryl's commanded. You've led family readiness groups, you've volunteered countless numbers of hours, and you've maintained your commitment to our Army. So thank you, Erin, for everything you've done and you'll continue to do here at West Point. And I might add just a footnote. Again, Siri provided me with this information, but I might add that Aaron and Darryl were high school sweethearts and were actually married on an Army-Navy football game weekend in 1988. And Army happened to win that day, 20-15. So I am told, and this is with good source information, actually it's from your son, that you're going to go ahead and retake your wedding vows this fall to ensure we beat Navy for the third year in a row. So there'll be lots of us watching for that. And I wasn't joking. We can set the date right now if you want. I will say that I did joke with Darryl a couple minutes ago, and I said, you know, which one did you enjoy more, the win over Navy that day or your wedding? And he actually had to pause and think. I'm like, dude, she's standing right there. What's wrong with you? So it'll be an interesting night at Quarters 100 tonight. So, hey, but look, the reason we're here today is to ensure the United States Military Academy has the leadership it needs. And everybody can read Darryl's bio in the program. In my view, the view of all the other senior leaders of the United States Army and the Secretary of the Army, to include the United States Senate and the President of the United States and the Secretary of Defense. Everyone recognizes that Darryl Williams is clearly qualified to do his job here and to do it extraordinarily well. He's distinguished himself in some of the toughest jobs in the Army, beginning with his first assignment in the 1st Battalion, 76th Field Artillery, and he hadn't stopped for the last almost 35 years. In order to optimize any organization and get to the next level of excellence, everyone must be doing the job that they are best fit for. And the West Point Superintendent's chair is absolutely the right fit for Darryl Williams. He's the right guy at the right time for this academy. He's a warfighter. He has the experience to mold and develop the officers that are going to lead our future Army. In 1982, the West Point football program that was sent to me by one of your classmates describes Darryl as coming to West Point with virtually no football background. True. But as it turned out, because Darryl was dedicated, he was hardworking, he had tremendous perseverance, and he had a significant amount of athletic skill, he finished with 3 letters, and he was a standout defensive tackle, even though you went 0-3 against Navy. Don't ever do that again. So this time around, though, Darryl is coming to West Point with a lot of great background, and it's going to serve him extraordinarily well. He has 111 months of Green Tab command time, starting with an MLRS Battery Command and 18th Airborne Corps Artillery, where he served in combat and is credited with destroying an Iraqi infantry, armor, and artillery battalions. He then went on and he commanded Artillery Battalion in the 4th ID and was the 1st Armored Division Davardi commander, which he participated also in combat. Additionally, he stood on the line as the DCG of 2nd Infantry Division in Korea, securing the peace along the demilitarized zone. He took care of our wounded warriors as the commanding general of our Warrior Transition Command. He commanded all of our Army forces throughout the continent of Africa and led the U.S. response effort to isolate and contain the Ebola virus in West Africa, thereby saving thousands, if not millions, of lives. And, of course, he's coming here from a key NATO 3-star command and Allied Land Command in Turkey. Between Korea, Iraq, Europe, Turkey, and Africa, Darryl has spent over a third of his time in service overseas with a truly impressive combat and operational record that very few can match. In between operational assignments, Darryl was a division planner, worked in the Army and Joint Staffs, was an aide to the President, graduated from Leavenworth, SAMS, and Navy War College, and significantly, he was a company, battalion, and regimental TAC here at West Point. But beyond Darryl's resume, and most importantly, in my view, Darryl is a leader of character. He's a man of tremendous and huge integrity, and he's not afraid to speak truth to power, but he does it in a professional way. And he's a man of tremendous personal humility. Darryl understands where he came from. He understands how far he has come. He understands how to get knocked down, dust yourself off, learn from your mistakes, and pick yourself back up and climb the hill. It doesn't matter how hard the challenge is, Darryl Williams is up to it. He crosses the river regardless of how wide. He crosses the mountain no matter how high. Darryl Williams is a guy who does not fall in love with himself when he crosses and passes a mirror. He's the kind of guy, in my view, who can walk with kings and keep the common touch. He's exactly what we need in the next superintendent at West Point to continue the great legacy of Bob Caslin that the Academy has. And he's exactly the right guy for this school at this time. West Point is extraordinarily privileged, extraordinarily fortunate to have Darryl Williams here as a 60th superintendent. So Darryl, I have 3 pieces of initial guidance for you as you assume responsibility for the long gray line, and we'll have many, many more conversations in the months to come. First, uphold the traditions of duty, honor, and country. They are the bedrock of this academy, and they form the core, the CORE, of the entire officer corps of the United States military. Continue to instill in our young officers those core values, and those will guide their decisions as they lead America's sons and daughters in the crucible of ground combat, as this institution has done since 1802. Stay true to West Point's mission to educate, train, and inspire. Prepare them to lead our Army. Produce great warfighting lieutenants who will rise and lead our Army well into the next 4 decades. Give our future leaders the skills they need to be technically and tactically competent and to develop others to do the same. And foster the values that support the ideas that you and I and every soldier, NCO, and officer in the United States Army have sworn to fight and, if necessary, to die in order to protect. Second, prepare the Academy for the future. Adapt to produce the leaders we need for the Army of 2028 and beyond. A cadet you commission in your tenure here as the SOUP is very likely to be the Chief of Staff of the Army in the year 2060. Think about that. You're building the leaders that are going to lead the Army of the future. And while we can't know exactly what war will look like 10, 20, 30, or 50 years from now, leadership, we do know, will always remain the key to combat power and combat effectiveness. We must embrace technology and innovation, but we must not lose focus on the Army's primary purpose, and that is to win. We don't go to war to participate. We don't go to try hard. There's no place in combat for second place. And we must use the ideas of the best and the brightest to put ourselves in the best position to fight and win this nation's wars of tomorrow, next year, or 50 years from now. And that, Darryl, is what it's all about. It's all about winning on some distant and violent battlefield where the character of war is changing before our very eyes. Artificial intelligence, robotics, cutting-edge technologies are going to transform how we fight. Therefore, we must ensure that we develop our leaders to anticipate and understand those changes. In order to do that, we need a SOUP with the wisdom and the vision to understand where the field of conflict is headed and to adapt the Academy for the Army of the future. Darryl, in my view, you are that leader. And third, and my last piece of guidance, beat Navy. You think I'm kidding. I am not. You don't want to be like P.T. Beauregard. So welcome back to West Point with a little bit of pressure. And congratulations, you're the right guy. And your selection here is very special to all of us, not only those who graduated from this school, not only those who are on the faculty and in the athletic department here, not only those that are students and parents, but also those of us who never went here. This is a special place for all of us in the Army, and you're a special person, and you're going to do a wonderful job. So lead this institution, develop the core, and continue to provide the leadership that America so richly deserves. By the way, refresh yourself on a few things. Refresh yourself on memorizing the definition of leather, which I understand is important up here for some reason, and exactly how many gallons of water are in some pond around here. So I don't write this stuff. So, but also the other thing too, Caslin told me to remind you to go ahead and practice multiple iterations of the rocket. Gillen can tutor you, but I'm sure it'll all come back to you very, very quickly. Welcome back to West Point. You are now the 60th superintendent of this great institution that has national importance, and you're going to be decisive to the future of our Army and our nation. Well done, Darryl.
Senator Ernst, Chief, other distinguished guests, USMA team, ladies and gentlemen, my football teammates, and all the family members in attendance the Chief talked about. Thank you for all being here today. General Milley, sir, thanks for the great words, and I appreciate the trust and confidence you and Secretary Esper have in me in nominating for this assignment. Sergeant Major Love, Steve Gillen, Cindy Jebb, Boo Corrigan, Mark Bigger, and the rest of the leadership team, thank you for making this as smooth a transition as possible for welcoming Aaron and I back to West Point. We want to publicly express our thanks to Bob and Shelley Caslin for their leadership of the Academy over these past 5 great years. When I was a cadet back here in the 1980s, Bob was a TAC officer and my football coach. He was an incredible leader and a role model then, and certainly that reputation grew throughout his 40 years in the Army. West Point, as a leader development institution that prepares future Army leaders to fight and win anytime, anywhere, flourished under General Caslin's humble command style. Our Academy and most certainly our Army are better because of his wisdom and leadership. Please join me in a round of applause for him. Maybe you'll hear it in Florida. To the USMA team, I know firsthand the importance of having smart, tough, thoughtful, and innovative leaders of character who can lead and operate in some very complex environments, the kind of leaders this great institution develops. I know how important good leadership is for the Army so we can defend our nation and win on the battlefield. So the work we do here to train and develop leaders is crucial to that end, and the importance of our work here to the Army and nation cannot be overstated. I've seen the tremendous work this team does and the young officers I've had the privilege to lead and see in action as they lead and live honorably from the front. And closer to home, I've seen your tremendous work manifested in one brand new second lieutenant who also gets to call me Dad. So on a personal note, thanks for taking care of my youngest these past 4 years. I truly appreciate what this team does, and I'm honored for the opportunity to lead such a group of outstanding Americans. And I look forward to getting to meet all of you all in the days to come. While today may mark a new chapter for West Point in terms of its leadership, know that the essence of our mission and our number one focus remains constant: developing the leaders of character who are committed to the values of both the United States Military Academy and, more importantly, the United States Army, who are ready to lead America's sons and daughters in the crucible of ground combat, and who know what it takes to fight and win. Over the next several weeks, in close coordination with our Army senior leaders, I'll develop and refine leadership priorities and areas of focus. But for now, my intent is clear: pick up where General Caslin left off as we continue to develop leaders of character to the high standards our nation expects and the profession of arms demands. So in that spirit, we have about 1,200 or so young men and women who are, as we speak, taking their first steps on that journey towards becoming leaders of character, who are looking to us to lead, guide, and develop them along that journey. So let's get to work. All policies and procedures remain in effect until further notice. Beat Navy.